Ishwarama's resplendent sun. It's the start of a bright new day. Time to rise, time to shine, Lord divine. Time to lead us along life's way. Awake, Lord of Buddha party. Awake, O Lord, over all mankind. Awake, O Lord of compassion, that the world good fortune may find.
To introduce our guest speaker. Swami has said that the hospital project is very, very, very important. And obviously it is. In such a short time, so many things have happened in regards to the hospital project. My wife and I were fortunate, it was a surprise to us, to be there at the inauguration of the hospital. I'm not going to say much about it, that's why Isaac's here. But after the inauguration, Swami, for his birthday talk, gave recognition to 4 people. They were on the stage with Swami, and he presented the most gorgeous, large, silver bowls. And he spoke about one of them. When Swami presented the first bowl to Isaac Tigrett, Bhagavan said, "For our specialty hospital, the equipment was offered by Tigrett. With great enthusiasm and devotion, he sent the most modern and sophisticated equipment." Today, most hospitals in the country have become big ventures. Investing rupees 10 crores in a hospital, the promoters may expect to make a huge profit. It is for such selfish purposes that hospitals are being established. But inside, there is not a trace of self-interest. Very few try to recognize this truth. Recognizing this fact about Swami, Tigrett sought to help the hospital project to the maximum extent of his capacity. He is not resting content with what he has done. He is keen to support the project in years ahead. It is necessary that such altruistic impulses in persons like Tigrett should grow. Men may make money, but that money acquires merit only when it is used for good causes. Not all persons have this impulse, perhaps 1 in a million. Tigrett has helped our hospital project in a spirit of sacrifice. The reason his great devotion to Swami, it is commendable that one should manifest one's devotion in the form of help to others. Divine grace is bestowed only in the case of those who convert their devotion into service of the divine. Today, there are people who give a small donation and want to publicize it. But there are also many in the country who give large sums in charity without any publicity. They are the salt of the earth. The sun rises inflatedly because of such men in the world. It is a noble act for anyone to help others wherever they be. It is noteworthy that Tigrett, from New York, should extend this help to a small village like Puttaparthi. I am saying this not to praise him, but to rejoice in his spirit of sacrifice. I look forward to his continuing to develop this spirit of sacrifice in the coming years, and I bless him. And at that time, Swami presented the silver bowl to him. Isaac, we're so glad that you're here today, and we look forward to your talk. Thank you.
Hello to all of you. It's a great pleasure to be here. I thank the Society, and most of all, I thank our beloved Lord for bringing me here today. I appreciate those words of Cy. It's the first time I've actually heard them. I was sitting behind him, and I didn't hear the translation. It's the first time I've heard actually what he had to say about me. I wonder if it's all true, but it must be. I feel worthy at times, and I worry about it at others. I thought today I would tell you my story. I am from Jackson, Tennessee, a small town outside of Memphis, Tennessee, where I grew up. I had a beautiful childhood until the age of about 13. At that time, I witnessed the death of one of my brothers. My older brother shortly afterwards went insane and eventually took his life. My parents were divorced not before my father, who sort of ran the town, had the largest industry in the town, destroyed the family name and the business out of guilt. For many, many years, I suffered from these tragedies, not unlike tragedies that many people experienced in this room, and was always very confused by it, carrying great pain. But it wasn't until I had the opportunity to ask such a Sai Baba a question, which he allowed me to ask. I said, Swami, why was I born into a family with so much pain, with so much tragedy, insanity, death, destruction? He smiled and said to me, to soften your heart. Suddenly, what I had considered to be a horrible upbringing, I realized was perfect, because it had it had made me sensitive to everything and everyone in my world. So many of you who may feel that you have been dealt a bad card in life should look at the positive aspects that have come from your personality, the Sai personality, that you now carry and share with others. I was blessed at a very young age to go to England at the age of 15. I never graduated from high school, nor did I go to college. I started a business there, which I must say probably offended many Sai devotees at the time. A business now world famous called the Hard Rock Cafe. I was 19 years old when I started that business. Shortly afterwards, I had always felt that there was a master. I had been raised in a Baptist family. I come from a long line of missionaries and ministers, many of which are probably praying for my soul at this very moment if they knew I was here. And I knew that there was a God. I knew that there was a Lord, and I had always been very, very interested in the metaphysical side of our existence in this life. Shortly after starting this business, after a year or two, it was very successful. In fact, Sai Baba arranged for it to be successful from the very first day, despite the fact that I didn't know what I was doing. There were lines around the block of this institution, and still are at this very day. I was ashamed that I had not gone to college. I had not graduated from high school. So I wanted to go back to school, and I went and took some courses, extension courses at Harvard University in 1973. It was there that I read about a book in Time magazine, a book that I had dreamed about some 2 weeks previously. It was called The Secret Life of Plants. It was a book that was published by Harper's & Row in 1973 by very distinguished authors. It was about parapsychology and paranormal events around the world. I immediately picked up the phone, having dreamed about this book some 2 weeks before. I called the authors, and I asked them if I could buy the theatrical rights, in other words, the movie rights to this book. The gentleman said, my goodness, Mr. Tigrett, I'm so glad that you called. You probably read the reviews. The reviewers in all the magazines said, don't buy this book. It's crazy. It's about all kinds of weird stuff, and none of it can be proven. And we were at the point really almost of thinking about suicide, my partner and I, because the book has not sold one copy, and it's supposed to be a big book for Harper's and Row. I said, I don't care. I feel that it's my duty. I must buy these rights, which I did over the telephone and through some telegrams shortly afterwards. We concluded the deal. 6 weeks after I bought these rights, this book suddenly turned around, hit the New York Times bestseller list, and stayed there for 57 weeks. Only Shogun, I think, by James Clavell, has topped the sale of this book, which still continues to sell today. I was then suddenly called to Hollywood because this book was a bestseller, and the next thing I knew, I'd done a deal with Warner Brothers to distribute a film. Stevie Wonder, the famous artist, called me, and we shared the production rights. He did the soundtrack for the film, which is an album by Stevie Wonder called The Secret Life of Plants. And I was blessed to spend the next year of my life traveling around the world in preparation for the screenplay for the film, visiting all the phenomenon on the planet. We went to fabulous institutions like Duke University, which has a parapsychology department and probably the most famous in the United States, started back in the 30s. We went to Johns Hopkins, UCLA, many institutions that were now delving into this unknown nature of man. And everywhere I went, I would meet various individuals, so-called psychics, people who had extraordinary powers of perception, but none could tell me where it came from. They all suggested you must go to the East, because here in the Eastern land, this ancient wisdom is still known and still practiced today. It was on my first trip to the East that I first heard of Sathya Sai Baba. I was in a place called Aurangabad, which is in the northern part of India, and I was sitting in a hotel lobby, and suddenly in my mind, which I've been having lots of strange experiences since I was a child, I heard this voice say, hey, you've come at last, come and see me. I looked around this hotel lobby, and the only thing that caught my attention was a portrait of Sathya Sai Baba, which was hanging in the lobby. Although I'd heard of him, I had never seen his photograph until that moment. When I discovered who it was that was speaking to me, I immediately went down to Bangalore the very next day. My experience began, I was very curious, obviously. We all are on those first visits, and I'm sure if you all think back to your first time, and if those have been blessed enough to go, to where you are today, you've all had such a miraculous transition. I stood at the back. It was a festival day. There must have been an unusual number of people at White Field, probably 5,000 to 8,000 people, I don't know, but I came late as I usually do, including today, and I stood at the very back against the wall. Sai Baba came out, parted the crowd, walked right up to me, started making a circular motion with his hand, and out came this gray powder. That began my journey with Sathya Sai Baba. He didn't say anything to me at that time. I ate the vibhuti, which I'd been instructed to do by devotees there, and left there thinking that was an absolutely fantastic experience. It was on my way home that I had my second and most interesting experience of the paranormal. I had immediately, I must say, as all of us probably who've had this eye experience there, many of you know that it's referred to as doing your dirty laundry. I was very confused. He had brought out all kinds of things in me. And of course, this is the way masters have always taught. They have to bring out the worst in you so that you can get over these things, so you can recognize these things and deal with them. And I was very confused about words like avatar, which I'd heard for the first time in my life, and claims of omniscience, which was beyond my comprehension. I got on an airplane. At that time, I had spent 2 or 3 days sleeping on a beach down in south of Madras, a place called Malabarapura. And I got on a plane in Madras to go back to Delhi. It was on this plane, I sat down, there was a seat between us, to an elderly gentleman, probably around 90 years old. He was dressed in traditional Indian pajama suit, and I put my little pad and paper down in between us, the seat, and I pulled out a little picture that I bought at the bookstore at Whitefield, a tiny picture of Satya Sai Baba. He said, "Oh, great Guru, would you like to see a picture of my Guru?" He then had a little bag in which he pulled out an ancient sepia photograph. He said, "That is Ramakrishna, and standing next to him is my father, who was a devotee of Ramakrishna." And I looked at the picture and said, "That's very lovely." In fact, probably there are only 3 known pictures of Ramakrishna, who died in the 1860s, who was a great saint, and as India is so famous for many, many of these great saints and sages. He then started to meditate in his chair. A few moments later, he said, "I have something I know I must give to you." He reached into his little bag and pulled out a very beaten silver box. He, with great difficulty, opened this box, and inside there were layers of silk which he started to pull out, and as he opened them, they disintegrated in his hands. And then one silver silk package after another would disintegrate. It was very obvious that this vibhuti, or pardon me, I've given it away, what was in it, this box had not been opened for a long, long time. Finally, he did reach the last little layer, and here was vibhuti, as I had seen only once before, and that was with Sai some days before. He said, "This is vibhuti that was blessed by Ramakrishna. My father carried it all of his life. I have carried it all of my life, and I know that I'm supposed to give you some." He gave me some. I didn't really know what I was doing, but I put some on my third eye and had a little taste, emulating what I'd seen at Whitefield. And he then began to try to put this package back together. We were both aware, his hands were shaking just from age. We were both aware that he was going to spill some, and he did. In fact, he spilled the entire box of vibhuti. As it moved through the air and fell on a pad that was between our seats, it immediately turned bright red into kumkum. He jumped back. In fact, we both jumped back. He said, "Oh," he said, "that must be your guru. My guru didn't do miracles." He told me to keep it with me, which I have kept and I have on my puja table. In fact, I feel a great affinity to the soul and spirit of Ramakrishna, which is obviously close with our own Lord. And I go to Ramakrishna missions whenever I have the opportunity, especially in Bangalore. The bhajans are beautiful there. So this began this wonderful journey to the lotus feet for me. It was a long journey. In fact, 15 years between the first visit and the first interview with Satya Sai Baba. I went every year, sometimes twice a year, and Sai Baba never looked at me. He never mentioned my name. He never spoke in my direction. He never called me for an interview. In fact, everyone was quite certain he was ignoring me very, very well. over those 15 years. In fact, I was sort of the joke around the ashram. I finally got a job. You know, I wanted to do something in service. And I became the guy when, you know, you go down there and a lot of people get so involved with wanting an interview, you know, and after the 5th or 6th day or 3rd or 4th trip, if they haven't gotten an interview, they are as neurotic a group as you've ever seen in your life. I'm sure all of you have been through that, as a matter of fact. And they used to pull me out. They said, well, you think you're having a tough time? This guy had an interview for 10 or 15 years. And that was my job. They would roll me out every time some neurotic group was going crazy. And this guy's been down here forever and he's never got an interview. Nobody even looked at him. It was no trouble at all to go there and not receive an interview. It was just a blessing to be there, just to be near him. I did have a number of experiences, which I will share with you briefly, that aided my road to faith, also confused me as much as it aided me. 1975, some 3 years after I had first gone down there, 2 years, I guess 74, yeah, a year or so after I'd gone down there, I was here in California, and I went to a party somewhere late at night. I'd had a bit too much to drink, so I waited until about 5 o'clock to go home. I was in a friend of mine's brand new Porsche Targa, which I borrowed, and I had a home down in Malibu on the beach. And as I drove home at 5 o'clock in the morning, I fell asleep at the wheel, doing about 85 miles an hour. And this car leapt from the road. As it began to turn in midair, which it did about a dozen times before it stopped down a ravine, I suddenly woke up and looked to my right, and here seemed like a figure sitting next to me in this convertible car. It put its arm around me. The car went over some dozen times and was completely destroyed. There were no doors, there was no windshield, there was nothing left. I had no seatbelt on. And I knew it was Satya Sai Baba. I left the next day for India to thank him, and of course his thanks or recognition was non-existent. He didn't even look at me, he didn't talk to me, and I went through a lot of confusion, of course, about that. A couple of years later, I was in a hotel room in Denver, Colorado, and I had an epileptic fit. This was brought on by a large dosage of drugs, which I was taking at the time, and I literally lost all motor response. I was hyperventilating, foaming at the mouth. I suddenly fell to the floor. My vision was blurred, and the next thing I knew, I swallowed my tongue. I couldn't even reach my hand up to my mouth to pull my tongue out. It was a state of epilepsy. And the next thing I know, I am dead. And the spirit, like you've read about so many times, came right out of the top of my head. Suddenly, I was in the room looking down at myself in a state of peace, I must say. It was pretty nice to be there. And the information came to my head that it was not necessary to die at this time, that all I had to do was call my guru's name and he would save me. I called Sai Baba's name in this formless state, and suddenly he was in the room. He picked me up, put me on a bed, pulled my tongue out of my mouth, and pressed on my chest. When he did this, my spirit went back into my body, and as I was looking up, it was all blur, but all I could see was a red outfit with 3 little gold buttons. I again, the next day, left for India to thank him, and was ignored entirely the whole trip. These are very extreme experiences. Many of you have had the same experience in a more subtle form. It is just his presence. It's just that I was such a bad boy, he had to really work hard to keep me alive. But many of you experience this feeling of Sai being with you, which he is, almost on a daily basis. In fact, it's so strange, as I was sitting here today, I really realized for the first time that I believe, for the first time in my career of trying to be a devotee, today I really do consider myself a devotee of Sathya Sai Baba. I have given in my heart, my actions, everything that I have. It was a long road, it is a long road for all of us. So I'm very grateful for this experience, because I will come away today for the first time feeling that indeed I am a devotee of Sathya Sai Baba. 15 years of sand time, that's what I call those 15 years. In fact, in the early days, the mandir, in front of the mandir, was sand. Now it's concrete. They've made it a little bit easier for the water to run through and so forth. The sale of the hard rock sort of culminated in the 15th year of my business. Sai Baba arranged for someone to come along and offer me too much money for my business, and it was an opportunity for me to fulfill a promise that I made to him after I met him for the first time. And I set up a foundation called the Rama Foundation, and I'd always set aside, Lord, I will give you half of everything I've got if you will help me with this business and guide me in my life. So when the sale of the hard rock came around, I suddenly had a great deal of money in which I wanted to give in service to Sathya Sai Baba. No one knew this, only myself and my wife. Suddenly I'm on one of my visits there in Prashanti Nilayam, and for the first time, Sai Baba calls me in for an interview. I was in a state of complete shock. In fact, I thought he was talking to the guy behind me. I was convinced he had to be. I went in for my first interview with our Lord, and he sat, as those of you who have been blessed to have an interview, it's a small room. There were another of other people from around the world that were there. And he said to me, I guess he'd been waiting to really pick on me good in person. So he put all the heat on me. He said, the first thing he said is, where is God? I said, God is in my heart. He said, no. God is everywhere. It's like a fish swimming through water. The water is above the fish, around, below, and inside. You are a fish swimming through God. That is a concept which, if one can understand and believe every single moment, it will make you understand who you are and who He is, and also the word omniscience, because He is with us here today just as much as He is in Puttaparthi. As He has said to Himself, His form, His human form, is a delusion. And I warn you all of this delusion. I have suffered from it myself, thinking that there was some duality, that He was there and I'm here, and that's not the way it is at all. He is everywhere, including inside of you. You are Sai Baba Himself. He lives within each of us. It is very, very important to also try to get away from that delusion. It's hard when you see His form and realize that He is in His form to communicate with us very readily. And of course we all want to be near Him. But He is here. He is as close as you could possibly imagine, and I know many of you do. Hopefully most of you. The second question He asked me is, how do you get to God? And I have to preface this with going back some 15 years to the first visit to Prashanti Nilayam, which was some 3 or 4 months after the visit I had in Whitefield. And as I came out of the canteen, which I understand that they're rebuilding the canteen now, I don't know what I'm going to do with that. I used to say I come here for the food, because I love Utmai, and I think that the food is great there. But as I came out the little canteen, I noticed a little sign over the door. You've all been in the canteen, at least the men's canteen. It said, love all, serve all. And when I went back to London to my business, I decided that this would be the foundation of my business and my life, because it was such a strange business, dealing with all kinds of characters till late in the night. I thought that I would base my business on this saying. It struck me in such a way. This saying, love all, serve all, became famous and synonymous with the Hard Rock Cafe. It was on tens of millions of t-shirts, matches, buttons, and in each Hard Rock Cafe, in very, very large letters, we had put love all, serve all. I would get up with my staff every week and preach about love all, serve all, and this is how we run our business. Now I'm back again in my first interview with my second question from our Lord. And he says to me, how do you get to God? Having missed the first question, I did not answer. He asked someone else, how do you get to God? He then turned to me, looked me directly in the eye, and said, love all, serve all. I knew then, as I had hoped and prayed, that he had been with me each and every step on my journey in my business and in my life, and of course burst into tears. He told me, as he took me back into the inner sanctums there for when he really lays you on the heavy stuff, and said, in fact it was very sweet, he took his little hand like this, and he said, a new chapter is beginning, a new page is turning. He said, I want you to work with me. I said, Swami, it is my honor and my duty to work with you in any way that I can. And I told him that I had set up a foundation called the Rama Foundation, and that it had a great deal of money, and that I would like to use it in service in some way. He said, yes, I know. So we will use it to build a hospital here in Vishanti Nilayam. And there, my journey with the hospital began. It was the most exciting thing because I have some business acumen and have been blessed to be a public company and the chairman of such on the London Stock Exchange and also on the American Stock Exchange. And I had over 4,000 employees around the world, some 20 locations. So I knew how to do things, I knew how to organize people. And it was a great blessing when he said, I just don't want you to help finance this thing, I want you to do the planning of the hospital, all the medical planning. I want you to arrange the architecture of the hospital and how it is to be built and what it is to look like. And I want you to arrange for the very best equipment that we could possibly get together to be in that hospital. And I want you to do it in 9 months. I was in shock, to say the least, not knowing anything about the hospital business. It was Swami's blessing because, of course, he is in control of everything. I contacted Hospital Corporation of America. They said it's impossible to do the medical planning in anything less than a year. But with Swami's grace and a lot of pushing from me and him using me to push them, and people who would never give up their weekends, their evenings, suddenly all gathered together, and within 6 weeks we had completed the entire hospital planning that Swami had wanted. No one could believe that it had been done. Then it came time for the architecture and how the architecture of this building should work. And this, indeed, was one of the great blessings, meeting a wonderful man whose name is Professor Keith Critchlow. He is the world's only teacher of sacred architecture. He knows all of the ancient geometry. He understands all of the etheric forms that were used in the beginning of architecture that has been lost in time. He knows the importance of these forms on a spiritual basis and how it connects us with our own etheric body and with God himself. I contacted Professor Critchlow, who is not a Sai devotee, but had heard of Sai Baba many times, and wanted to go there. We went down to meet with Sai Baba, and he blessed Critchlow and said, yes, you know how to do this, only you. I will work through you. It's really fascinating because the first gesture for the hospital was actually sanctifying the land. There's a certain mandala, which is, if you know what a mandala is, in fact, the famous rings that he gives, which are 9 by 9, that's a mandala. It's an ancient symbol. It is just like a mantra. It is a very powerful, powerful thing. And we asked Swami, Professor Critchlow said, Swami, shall we use this in particular mandala, which is, no one even knows its beginning, but sometime 10,000 years ago, the very beginning of time. Swami said yes. So we went out to the land that Swami had purchased, and as we're going out, Professor Critchlow told me, you know, I did this for some Tibetan lamas in building a monastery some years ago. That's how I knew, in fact, about this mandala and how important it was, but it doesn't work unless there is an eagle flying overhead of the property or near the property at the time. When we got out to the land, there were 5 eagles waiting for us. 5. All sitting right on the spot, the center of the property where this mandala had to be drawn. As we approached, they didn't even get up. They just sort of scooted aside, and we drew the mandala on the ground. We also chanted sacred mantras, and the land at the beginning was sanctified, at least as much as human beings can do it in the small spark that they have within them. Shortly afterwards, Sai Baba came out, and of course, we had a puja, and we broke coconuts, and we knew that it was sanctified completely then. Professor Critchlow designed this hospital with a fabulous team of architects in London who worked, literally 100 draftsmen worked day and night to actually do the building drawings themselves. We were told once again that to actually, because this is a massive hospital, it's 280,000 square feet in that building, we were told that it would be impossible to produce these building drawings in anything less than 8 to 9 months. Through the grace of Sri Satya Sai Baba and his will, those plans were completed in 6 weeks, with 100 draftsmen working day and night. They were approved by Satya Sai Baba. It then became time to start the actual building. We were down to about 8 months. Swami had, of course, at his birthday that year, announced that in 1 year's time, the model for healthcare in India, indeed the world, would be opening at Prashanti Nilaya. It's very interesting to note, too, I must say, that when Swami began the university system and the school system, he said at that time that the school system that he was going to create, a free educational system, would become the model in India for its educational system. The President of India, or rather the Prime Minister of India, who came and spoke the day the hospital was to be dedicated, in his speech, he said the educational system that Sai Baba has created over these past 20 years is now going to be the model for the Indian educational system. Indeed, Satya Sai Baba also said that this hospital would become the model in the future for free hospital care. And really, it's just, the thing that's fascinating about it, it's based on service, it's based on love. Is putting back the education of human values into service that all of us can participate in. And I have no doubt, as I'm sure you do not either, that this will indeed become the model for healthcare in India. I have to tell you that the opening of the hospital was, of course, very satisfying in some strange way to me, having worked so hard. I guess I went over some 18 or 19 times over the period of a year, 2 or 3 months, working on this hospital. a group called ECC, who are the finest builders in India, were responsible for building it. In fact, the chairman of ECC was one of the people who Swami acknowledged during the ceremony. They had some 2,000 men and women working around the clock, 3 shifts every single day and night on this 100-acre site with big arc lamps out there. And it was indeed a complete miracle that this hospital shell, the basic building, was completed on time. It, absolutely incredible. And not a single person was hurt, which is unheard of in this type of situation, during that entire time, working day and night in very, very difficult conditions. But I have to tell you that receiving the bowl from Sathya Sai Baba, and also being acknowledged by him in so many other ways, but in particularly sitting up on stage, having thought about my 15 years of sand time, and sitting up on stage with our Lord, the bowl really meant it was for you. I mean, it was the same feeling I got when I was blessed to give him this cash. I gave it for all the people who don't have money, who would like to be able to do that sort of thing, who in their hearts, in their purest sense, would do that. That is the spirit in which I gave it. I couldn't have done it any other way. It was the same when the bowl was given. I felt that it was just, I represented all the people who had worked so very, very hard to make this happen. And I guess it's that consciousness that Swami has slowly brought into my life, and I'm sure into many of yours as well. My work with Sai Baba has continued in also a very interesting way, which will probably shock some of the society members here, but I feel obligated to speak about. Sathya Sai Baba also, at that same time, when I had my first interview, told me to move to California from London, which I lived for some 25 years. He told me that I should work with a lady named Phyllis Crystal, which I had no idea what that meant. In between the work for the hospital while I'm here in California, Swami got me a house literally around the corner from this lady. She's a very famous devotee of Sai Baba. She has great mystical vision. She has created many meditation techniques which come directly from Sathya Sai Baba. I have been with the two of them many, many times together, and he completely directs this work. I have been blessed to be taken. We get together, I guess, for 2 or 3 hours in the morning and 2 or 3 hours in the afternoon in a form of meditation which Sai Baba has taught us. By the way, he has directed her to write a book on this, which is, I don't think, even available, or maybe it probably shouldn't be in the Sai Tustin Book Center. But it's called Cutting the Ties That Bind and Cutting the Ties That Bind Part 2. I can only tell you that this experience of understanding what these books are about is the greatest experience of my life. I want to share them with you only for one particular reason, and to let you know where that Sai is really working on many, many levels and dimensions. We travel, and I can only say that over the past 2 years, I guess I have experienced some 400 or 500 hours of travel where Sai Baba has taken us to other dimensions. He has taken us into the past. He has showed us the fabric of the universe. He has explained to us many, many of the ancient secrets that have been lost in time. But most of all, he has shown us his incredible omniscience and work that he is doing on many, many dimensions as well as this one. It is the most incredible experience of my life. It is a fantastic knowledge to have. By the way, and I even wondered why in heck is he, this fellow from the Hard Rock, why is he got me doing these metaphysical things? He took me back to a past life where he showed me that I had been a priest, This is some several thousand years ago. With great metaphysical knowledge and power, my ego had gotten in the way, and I had harmed many, many people by using this power for my own benefit. He's explained to me that this life is an opportunity in which to rectify the harm that I've done in the past. And it is this work which is really the work that I feel so blessed to be doing for Sathya Sai Baba. I know it may sound all very strange to you, but I felt like I must share it with you because it is absolutely phenomenal to see our Lord at work in many, many areas which we are totally unfamiliar with. I will only tell you of one incident, and I feel that it's okay, although he hasn't given me permission to even talk about this. I thought about it a lot on the way down here, whether I should mention it to you or not. But about 2 years ago when I started this work, he took us to this, let's call it this etheric dimension. And he showed us this thought form, because what happens when you think, and this is why all of you must be so terribly careful with your thoughts. They are as powerful as you can possibly imagine. Lust, greed, anger, hatred, cruelty, all of these things are human energy. They're just like the laws of physics. They may change, they may go in most cases into another dimension, but they do not die. And over the ages, this energy has collected on this etheric level. He took us to Russia. He, in this etheric level, showed us the entire Russian country. And over the country was this massive black cloud. He said, this is the oppressive energy which has oppressed these people for over 1,000 years, long before communism. He said, this powerful energy form is made up of fear of extreme punishment. And it's like a living beast, and it was absolutely controlling. I must tell you that in any of the ancient texts, you will continuously find, in every religion, as above, so below. There's a distinctive balance between this dimension and others, a reflective balance. All I can tell you is that Sai Baba was there. He called forward these angels, is the only thing I can call them. He brought forward these beautiful golden needles. We then went around this cloud, and he said, this thing is so powerful it would destroy you if we disturb it. But we could put little holes in it. And we took these needles and we went specifically at various points in this cloud and pierced this cloud. He said, in time, all the energy will seep out of this thought form which is controlling this great country and these people. That was 2 years ago, and the rest is history. It is so fabulous to know that he is working to change this world. Many of you may be feeling great anxiety these days. I know I am, because a new world is coming. Sai Baba has told me several times that, and it's written, in fact, that this is the beginning of the golden age, the last yuga of man. So we all must prepare ourselves for this. It's time to put away any petty thoughts and really follow Sai's words if we can. He is with us as he is here today, and I am blessed to have imparted this knowledge to you, as strange as it may sound. Know that he is the one, and he is here with his righteousness to change the path of mankind, and is doing so on many levels. I thought I would end with, really, it's so funny because I'm a big smoker. I've tried to give up smoking so many times. It's been awful. I can't do it. And even at this great birthday of Sai Baba this year, I said, I am going to give up smoking. That's going to be my birthday present to Sai Baba. And I did, and I was very proud of myself, and 4 weeks later I was puffing away like nobody's business. And I felt very badly because my little 5-year-old daughter had been with me at the ashram, and, you know, I told her I'm giving Sai this present. And she was, the second she saw me smoking, she said, but that was the present you gave Sai Baba. And I felt so ashamed. This morning I told her that I was going back to see Sathya Sai Baba in India at the end of this month, and that I was going to once again try to give up smoking. And I asked her if she would help me when I got back and so forth. And she turned to me and she said, well, you know, when we were there, I also gave Sai Baba a promise and a present, and I haven't given mine up. And I asked her, what was that, Augusta? She said, love. That is all he wants from all of us. That is the gift that is, in fact, his very fabric of what he is and what God is, and what we're all swimming through at this very, very moment. I hate to do this to you, but Sai Baba told me I had to sing. So one thing I can't do, and I sing off key, but I'm going to try. I tried it once before at a site, they were completely off key, but I'm going to give it a shot. This is a song that I sang all the way down the car coming here today, and it is also a song that I first heard at the ashram in India some 15 years ago. So bear with me. Oh, make me like you. Oh, make me like you. You are a servant. Make me one too. Oh, Lord, I am willing. Please do what you must do. Just make me like you, Lord. Make me like you. Sayonara.
Thank you, Isaac, so much for opening your heart to us. I know all of us here especially thank Swami for sending you here today to share with us beautiful experiences going deep inside to open our hearts.